on an all-new Dr. Phil.
Teens at risk of joining the wrong crowd.
If I'm lucky, he'll end up in prison and not dead.
I buried my 170th young person this morning.
Are you in a gang?
Yes.
Have you been shot at? Have you shot back?
2 times.
Did you know about this?
No.
What's being done to turn their lives around?
I have to tell you what's real. Every guy that I went to high school with, except for one, is dead now.
This is going to be a changing day in your life.
Have a good show, everybody. Here we go.
If it matters to you, that's what I want to talk about. Are we ready in the booth? Let's do it. What do you do when your kids are hanging out with the wrong crowd and making destructive choices? Today I'm talking with parents who fear that their kids will either end up in a jail cell like this one or dead because they want to belong to something so badly they'll risk breaking the law and even death. That's exactly where April thinks her 14-year-old is headed. Recently, she found a shotgun, a 9mm, and a bag of cocaine in his room. And she's terrified that one day she'll receive that dreaded phone call that he's been killed.
Isaac, my 14-year-old, is a member of the Bloods. He's selling drugs, doing drugs. He's missed 119 days of school. I've lost control of him. Do you even think you have a problem?
I really don't notice it.
You're 14, you want to have a gun, you want to be in a gang, you want to stay high.
You're not going to make it through the end of this school year if you keep going the way that you're going.
Isaac is fascinated by guns. He thinks he should be able to carry a gun. My dad went into Isaac's room and found a gun lying right next to him while he was asleep.
Something has got to change because you're going to end up dead or in jail.
I found a little plastic baggie, and I knew it was coke. I asked Isaac about it, and he said, I've tried it, but I'm not doing it. I sell it. Like I was supposed to feel better because he wasn't doing drugs, he's selling them. A couple of months ago, we were all asleep. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning, and we heard a big boom, woke us all up. These windows were all busted out. It was a shotgun. At the time, I thought it was a random shooting, but later I found out by Isaac that it was some other gangbangers that he was into it with that did it. It really scares me. He's messing up his whole life, his whole future. He doesn't have a future right now if he keeps doing this kind of stuff, being in gangs, involved in drugs. This town we live in, he doesn't see that black men can be doctors, lawyers, they can be things. You don't have to be standing on the corner slanging crack. You can actually be somebody, but in our town, you don't see that. I'm trying to raise a man. I'm not trying to raise an inmate. I'm just tired. I haven't given up on him, but I'm tired. Right now, I just don't know what to do.
Well, Isaac, we just heard from your mom, and she was very expressive, but let me hear from you. Why do you think your mom wanted to be here today?
Because all the trouble I get into.
Yeah. Are you in a gang?
Yes.
Uh-huh. So you do what? What does that mean to you? That means you are who? You do what? How does this affect what you do every day?
Money, and it kills the boredness.
I'm sorry?
Money, and it just keeps me from being bored. Like,
keeps you from being bored? How much money are we talking about? How much money do you make in a day or a week?
About $7,500 a day.
$75 or $100 each day? And then what do you do with that money?
Save it or spend it.
Spend it on what?
Just whatever you want. Candy, money.
Yeah.
Hats, clothes.
And what do you do to get that money?
Sometimes I sell, but I usually don't. I probably just rob somebody, probably.
You rob somebody?
Yeah, like, I really don't go up to them and just demand for my stuff. Like, if I notice the house is, like, no one's there in the house, and we just rob the house.
You just go in the house and take what's not yours. Okay, what do you think about what you're hearing, Mom?
It's hard. It's hard.
All right. What's your greatest fear?
That if I'm lucky, he'll end up in prison and not dead.
Tell me, you're how old?
14.
What in your mind gives you the right to go in somebody's house and take what isn't yours?
Not having that myself.
Pardon me?
Not having what they have myself.
You don't have it, so you just go take it.
Yeah.
But you understand that they got a job and worked for it, right? So why don't you get a job and work for it? It's the question.
That is my job. Well, it was my job.
That is your job. So tell folks where your father is in all of this.
This is dead. He died in California.
He's dead. And how did he die?
Well, I really don't. Well, what they told me, he got shot 8 times, but I really don't know.
He was killed by the police?
Yes.
Was he in a gang?
Yes.
And it was gang related?
The shooting wasn't gang related. I think it was more drug related.
Do you remember your dad? Do you miss him?
Yeah.
That's part of the problem here. April says that he hasn't even had a chance to mourn, but now she thinks Isaac's at an age where it's starting to have an impact on him. Let's take a look.
Isaac's dad was he was addicted to cocaine really bad. His dad was killed by the police 5 years ago in January, and I feel like it was because of drugs. Isaac is at an age now that I think things have finally really hit him, that my dad's not here. One night he was crying, and I said, "What's wrong, Isaac?" And he said, "I miss my dad." What can I do? I mean, I can stop somebody from beating you up or hurting you, but I can't bring your dad back. I can't.
What do you think your father would want you to do? Do you think he would be glad that you're here?
Not really,
Why not?
because I'm doing the wrong things. Probably, if he was here, I would probably be in school right now.
Yeah. What did you like most about your dad?
Everything.
What do you miss most?
Him, like, everything about him. Really can't say what it is.
You got along with him? You spend time with you?
When he was there, yeah.
Do you think that he would want you to be going into people's house? Do you think he'd want you to be having a shotgun, a 9mm, selling drugs? How many days of school have you missed this year?
100 and, well, it ain't really days, it's classes, but they just call it days, but it's just really classes. And we have like 7 classes in one day, and there's 100 and something classes.
119.
119. If you had an option, if you had another way to live your life, to make money, to fill your time, would you rather do that, or do you like doing what you're doing?
I would do that, but I like what I do, but because a regular life is still kind of boring, but I could do a regular life, but it's just it's just boring living, just working and just sitting there in class, and it's just boring.
Do you think you'll wind up in jail?
Yeah.
I mean, is this your future? Because that's the actual size of a jail cell. That's it.
Well, everybody that really does that goes to jail, like.
But you talk about being bored. Does that look boring?
Yes.
Because that's the actual size.
Yep, it is.
So the question is, why is Isaac willing to risk it all by joining a gang and doing the things he's doing? Now, next, you're going to meet a man who you would never suspect knows exactly what causes kids to wind up in this life. We'll be right back. I want you to meet an amazing man. He is the author of the #1 best-selling book, Tattoos on the Heart. In his book, Father Greg Boyle shares stories of his 20 years of work with the toughest gang members in Los Angeles. He's also the founder of Homeboy Industries. Now, I want you to remember that name because you're going to want to be a part of this. Homeboy Industries. It is the largest gang intervention program in the country. His work shows that anyone really can change. It's amazing how he transforms lives. Take a look.
Homeboy Industries is the largest gang intervention and rehab center in the United States. We get about 15,000 folks who walk through our doors every year. Gang members trying to redirect their lives. They might come for tattoo removal and discover that we can locate a job for them, or maybe they need counseling.
Born and raised in one of the most gang-infested areas in Los Angeles. At 12 years old, I started getting involved in drugs, selling drugs and using drugs. At the age of 15, I was looking at life in prison for attempted murder. Luckily, I was charged as a juvenile, did 5 years altogether. Upon release, I came and talked to Father Greg, and, you know, he just signed me off and told me, my son, come back Tuesday. And after that, I've been working here ever since. And without Homeboy Industries, I would probably be back in jail right now.
I was an active gang member at once. This was a mistake. I just want to change my life and do what I got to do as a man. I'm just getting removed because I want to get my life together. I want to get out of the system. I've been going to school, going to work, and I don't want people to judge me for what I have.
And we're finished. So it frosted up nicely.
Los Angeles is the gang capital of the world. In LA County, we have 1,100 gangs and 86,000 gang members. I buried my first young person in 1988. And I buried my 170th this morning.
Please welcome Father Greg Boyle. Listen, you have heard this story thousands of times. Everyone is different, I know, but there are common elements. What is it that winds these kids up in this lifestyle? Because you say they're not really lured into it, they really go by default.
Yeah, I think the common misconception is that somehow they're pulled or drawn or attracted, but the truth is there's always a push factor. The common denominator really is a lethal absence of hope. If a kid can't imagine a future for himself, then his present isn't compelling. And if his present doesn't compel him, then he's going to not care whether he inflicts harm or duck to get out of harm's way. So you can't really scare a kid straight, because they know, Isaac knows more than anybody the consequences of what, you know, he's chosen. It's just that when kids don't care, kids in my community plan their funerals and not their futures, you want to address that, infuse it with a sense of hope for kids for whom hope is foreign.
You know, Isaac, I was asking you, do you think you're going to go to jail? And you said, well, people that do what I do go to jail. I mean, that's part of it, right? You just figure it's a matter of not if, but when.
Well, everyone I've seen do what I do, they went to jail. Like, they probably went for about... My uncle's in jail right now for doing that. Got a dead uncle from it. My brother, well, he doesn't really do what I do. He tries to keep me from doing it. And he tells me what happens to his older friends that go to jail for it and stuff.
Do you worry about getting killed?
Kinda, not really.
What do you say to Isaac when he's saying exactly what you are telling us they say? He's saying it in his own words. What do you say?
Well, the
to
problem
these
isn't that kids like Isaac aren't scared enough. They're just not hopeful enough. So a lot of times we want to kind of shake them and say, don't you see that this will end in prison or jail? And it's really not about kind of convincing them to do something. It's really about offering an alternative. I mean, he himself said that had he an alternative, a thing that he could embrace so he could leave this behind. But gangs are the places kids go when they've encountered their life as a misery, and misery loves company. So you need to sort of address what it is that he's fleeing. And clearly, you know, he's so lucky to have a mother like April. But there are a lot of traumas and things that have happened in his life that are unsettling and sometimes might make it difficult for a kid to conjure up that image that's so important about walking into your future.
And you say this is an adult issue.
Yeah, I think, you know, adults have let kids down, you know, and kids aren't going to, you know, they haven't let themselves down. And I would say society too. if where you live there aren't places like Homeboy Industries that would offer your son a chance
Yeah, we have nothing.
to kind of walk toward purposeful activity and in a sense of community and love.
I mean, isn't that really, and I don't want to make excuses for this young man, because you're old enough, you make the choices, you deal with the consequences, but options are really thin for him.
Very.
I mean, at this point, his father has gone this way. He's got uncles that are dead. He's embedded and enmeshed in this without any hope of change, no alternatives. I mean, it's kind of losing by default.
Yeah, but it's also important to underscore that, you know, we all want to seek a kind of compassion that can stand in awe at what the poor and kids who struggle with this have to carry, rather than stand in judgment at how they carry it. And so it's true that in parts of the city where folks, I grew up in the gang capital of the world. I didn't join a gang, but that doesn't make me morally superior to a kid like Isaac, who has to navigate more things than I ever had to navigate.
I called everyone in our town, everyone, for help, and their answer was call the police. That's what I don't want. I don't want him to ever see the inside of a jail cell.
Well, we're going to talk about that some, and next you're going to meet a young mother with a tragic story that is exactly what April fears more than anything at all. It is why we're doing this show and why all of this has to change. We're going to talk to her when we come back.
On May 30th, 2003, gangbangers walked down and just shot up the party. We were caught in the crossfire.
This precious 3-year-old boy was riding his bike in the front yard when 2 gang members drove by and opened fire. His mother, Tracy, was shot 5 times, and her 3-year-old son, Denzel, was tragically killed.
On May 30th, 2003, my 3-year-old son, Denzel, was shot and killed in a gang-related shooting. It was a typical Friday evening. My brother had a pool table in his yard. We decided we were gonna shoot pool. Gangbangers were trying to get my 2 neighbors that were visiting our yard. And 2 shooters walked down and just shot up the party. We were caught in the crossfire. My son was sitting on his bike when the shots started ringing out. My son was hit in the chin and in the throat. I was shot 5 times. All was on my mind was my baby. I'm seeing him laying there, but he's not moving. We get rushed to the hospital. When I came out of surgery, in came my doctor and a priest. So I already knew what they wanted to tell me, that he was gone. Nobody could never know the hurt of losing a child, especially so violently. I have to visit his grave on Christmas, on Thanksgiving, on his birthday, to let him know that I still love you. You're still in my heart. You forever will be in my heart. And the pain that I feel every single day.
Well, Tracy, I'm so glad to meet you, and I'm so sorry for the circumstance, for the reason that we're here. You understand what she fears.
Yes, I do.
At this point.
Yes, I do. I really do.
And you say that you blame the whole neighborhood even still.
I do, in a sense, but I know I shouldn't. But I really do.
Why is that?
Because, I don't know, I can't blame the whole neighborhood because it's not the neighborhood's fault, but every time I look across that street, I get angry. I get very, very angry because I know that somebody over there that live over there killed my baby violently for no reason. And it's hard for me to fight the feelings to hate the whole neighborhood.
Are you headed for doing what's happened here? I mean, you have these guns for a reason. Are you willing to use these guns to shoot somebody?
I use it for protection, like if they shoot at me back, but I don't go just doing crazy stuff, just shooting at people's yards, and I just do what I do until they shoot at me, and then I shoot back.
Have you been shot at? You have been shot at. And have you shot back?
2 times.
You've actually exchanged gunfire twice. And you're how old?
14.
Did you know about this?
No.
Father Boyle, I wonder sometimes if these kids who aren't really old enough to have a full appreciation of the consequences of their actions, their choices, to appreciate death and the impact that it has on somebody when they do this. Is there a way to get through to them how long and how horrible their actions are when they do something like what's done to her son?
Yeah, I think, you know, you can't scare a person straight. You can only care a person straight. And certainly, you know, Isaac has as much more access to the consequences and the data and the information than anybody else. The problem is caring enough to want to retreat from all that, and even clinging to the myth that a gun is somehow going to protect you. I've buried 171 human beings and know a lot of lives destroyed because of a gun. I can't name a single time when a gun has protected or saved a life, not once. And yet, so it's not rational. You can't, we're not talking rational actors, rational action. We're talking about folks who are stuck in a place of great despair, and somehow it's a community health issue, and people need to infuse kids with hope and help them imagine a future, even if he can't imagine one right now.
If you say nothing will stop a bullet like a job.
Well, you have to, that does about 85% of what needs to be done, and you want to have an alternative. You want to be able to say, leave that behind, you come over here, we'll help you. We'll give you a job and make sure you stay in school and incentivize his schooling. And that works, along with the community that embraces him and loves him.
Well, we're continuing this conversation. In just a minute, you're going to meet someone. He was just released from jail last week. He says that he's no longer in a gang. His mother says it's only a matter of time before he's back in jail or dead. We're going to add them to our conversation next. Well, these photos look like a lineup from an episode of America's Most Wanted, but they're actually Facebook photos of Lisa's 21-year-old son, Corbin, flashing his gang signs. Now, he was just released from jail a week ago and says he's no longer in a gang. His mother is not buying it. You don't believe it?
No. No. I didn't realize that he had even had any gang activity involvement until he'd been involved 3 or 4 years. We moved from our hometown when he was a sophomore in high school, and it wasn't until after we moved that I'd found out that he had been beat into a gang while we were in our hometown. I was just astonished because, yeah, we've had a horrible life with, his dad's not a gang member or anything, but his dad had, that he knew for 10 years as a sober man, all of a sudden got into drugs, and things went, we lost everything. And so I divorced him, and when I did that, that's kind of when he couldn't find his place anymore. Corbin's like a lost soul, and he just doesn't seem to find his way. Okay.
Now, Father, for everybody in the audience, explain what it means to be beat into a gang.
You get jumped in or initiated. Sometimes there are different things, sometimes 13 seconds, depending on what part of the country you come from. Usually 2 or 3 beat you in, initiate you, and then you're in that gang for life.
When you look back on that, does it seem like a good idea?
No, not now.
Were you aware that he had done that?
No, not until like 3 years after it happened. Of course, it's not something he came home and said, "Hey, Mom, I got beat into a gang today." Corbin amazingly, I mean, he could have dropped out of school. He could have went, but he didn't. He stayed in school. He did really fairly well in school. He graduated from high school.
Why did you stay in school?
Because I wanted to make some of myself, because I knew everyone looked down at my past about me being a gang member, so I wanted to try to better myself and graduate and do something with myself.
And you say that this is likely to happen on the day that they're most despondent. They got nothing, right? So they say, I'll do this.
Yeah, that's usually the profile of when it happens. But at this point, I mean, I trust you that you want to turn your life around. And at this point, this is where the community needs to come in. If no one will hire him because of his record, or because he's been prepared for nothing in prison, or nothing awaits him.
Well, most of his problem stands in the
with
tattoos.
The tattoos. And you know, everybody's a whole lot more than the dumbest thing they ever did. And you can't judge a book by its cover, but you also can't judge a book by its first chapter. So whatever the first chapter is, you need to kind of close that chapter and then begin again. And my hope is that you can find in your community programs that will be able to welcome you, or an employer that's willing to hire you.
All right, we got to take a break. Before becoming an ultimate fighting champion, he was dodging bullets in his neighborhood. Now he's a Hollywood action star, and he's here. We're going to talk with him next. Well, growing up in a neighborhood infested with gang activity, he was selling drugs and carrying guns by the age of 8. But as a teen, this star turned his back on the streets to become a true champion. Now he is a former UFC light heavyweight champion. He also starred in the movie The A-Team. Please welcome Quentin Rampage Jackson. Thanks so much for being here. You've been listening to everything we've been talking about.
Man.
What do you think about these kids and the choices that they're making?
Honestly, I see exactly where they're heading. Like, I feel for young Isaac, because looking at him, man, reminds me of me and that the way I was going. Like, it just reminds me of so much. Like, I wish he could see what, you know what I'm saying, what I've been through and stuff, and what helped me change, you know what I'm saying, the way I was going, because I was hanging around older people, as I could tell he is, because he's so smart, just like I was. He's hanging around like older guys who's a very bad influence on him, and same thing I was going through. And I just saw a lot of them dying, coming up missing, and going to prison and going to jail, and I was like, whoa, this is where I'm heading. Like, every guy that I went to high school with, went to junior high school with, we used to cut school, go drink and go smoke weed and stuff like that. Every last one of them, except for one, is dead now. And God spared me and got me away from that. Every last one of them dead. And one just got out of prison. He went to prison because, you know, people was bullying him, and he had a gun for protection, and he ended up killing this guy. And he did that when he was like 16, 17, and like he's 32 now. He just got out of prison like a year ago. And
well, this is Isaac right here. What do you say to this young man?
Man, I'm saying, man, I'm gonna have to tell you what's real. The same thing that changed my life. My uncle set me down, and he told me, like, man, I know you can fight, I know you tough, and you out here in these streets and doing things, but you heading for prison. And you know what I'm saying? The worst thing about prison is not really what you think, but the cell. I know it's boring and stuff in there, but the worst thing about prisons is that, you know, you already doing this dirt while you're young. Most likely you're gonna be really young in prison. All you gotta do is turn 18. And there's guys in there that's been in there for life. They real bad. They murderers and rapists and straight up the worst things you want to be around. And they bored too. And you're a young kid. Maybe you might be able to take one of them, keep one of them off for you too. But man, I'm gonna tell you, they ain't had no girlfriends in a long time. You laughing, but it's real. That's what changed my life. It's true. That's what happens in prison a lot of times. You know what I'm saying?
It's true.
It's real. You know what I'm saying? Straight up. Like, I changed when I was 17, And you 14, and I think you smarter than I was at 14, but I was doing a lot of dirty, everything, I did pretty much everything you did except for gangs. I didn't like gangs. They used to always jump me. And I felt like they was cowards, you know what I'm saying, because they couldn't fight one-on-one. And yeah, they'll make a little money and stuff like that, but it wasn't really worth it, you know what I'm saying? Like the gangs and stuff like that. I didn't really fit in with that. It wasn't really worth it, but...
Because you said you weren't really a bad person. That was just the only lifestyle you had exposure to.
Yeah, that was the cards I was dealt. I grew up in a bad neighborhood. It didn't make me a bad person, you know what I'm saying? I went to church. My uncle was a preacher. I chose to be baptized at a young age. But it was still, I told the guns and stuff like that, but you know what I'm saying? I never shot at anybody and stuff, but it was for protection and stuff like that. You know, I've been shot at a few times. I dodged a few bullets, you know what I'm saying? But, you know, I think, you know, you can use that and go on in your life and do something that you want. I hear you bored and stuff like that. I feel you. I was bored too. But you know what I'm saying? I got into video games and stuff like that. Now I'm really loving video games, man. They're good right now, dog. You know what I'm saying? You like video games? I love them things, man. They're good right now.
And your parents were divorced when you were 10. We've talked about that with Corbin here. I mean, there's definite pattern here.
Yeah.
But you chose to do something different.
I wanted it better for myself. Like, I grew up in this bad neighborhood. Everybody's just, for real, like, disappearing, jumping like fire. I wanted a future, like, you know what I'm saying? It's a weird thing. I hung around these guys. They was like drug dealers and like they want to be pimps and stuff like that. But for some reason, I learned not to be like them because sure enough, I went back home. I go back home to Memphis and visit. And these guys, like, older than me, still living home with their mama and stuff. That ain't cool, man.
No, it's not.
That ain't cool.
Now, Father Greg, what exactly does Homeboy Industries offer these kids that come there off the streets? You certainly will help them get rid of their tattoos. Talk about what happens at Homeboy.
Our program is not for those who need help. It's only for those who want it. So it takes what it takes, like in recovery, to walk through our doors. But once you do, we'll employ you. We take your tattoos off. We have mental health counseling. Anything that you could imagine that might be helpful to help somebody redirect his or her life. Anger management, parenting, case management. And then they get a chance also to work with their enemies, which is sort of the bonus point here, is that they can work in a bakery, work side by side with somebody they used to shoot at.
Because you make a distinction, and I think it's important. You say you don't work with gangs, you work with gang members.
Yeah, because gang violence is not about anything. There's violence in gang violence, but there's no conflict. There's no conflict to resolve. It's not nation states, Middle East, Northern Ireland. It's not about anything. It's just the language of kids who've given up. So I used to do that in my old days, you know, kind of peace treaties and truces. But now I believe in this one kid at a time, and no amount of me wanting that guy to have a life is the same as that guy wanting to have one. So he has to walk through the door, but once he does, red carpet, ticker tape parade, and the treatment.
You bet. All right, how do you get a troubled teen back on track? We're going to talk about that next.
We have 5 businesses now. Homeboy Bakery, Silk Screen, Homeboy Homegirl Merchandise, and we have Homegirl Cafe.
I went to prison for 8 months. Being a female felon doesn't look too good. I came to Homeboy Industries and they gave me a job. This job helped me to get off parole and probation. I live a normal life, you know? For the first time in my life, I live normal.
Give me your name, kiddo. I wouldn't trade my life for anybody's life. When people say that they love me, I always say it's mutual. There's no one-way street here. There is no us and them here. This is just about us.
Well, I'm here with an amazing man, and he doesn't like to be talked about like that, but he is. Father Greg Boyle of Homeboy Industries. It's the largest gang intervention program in the country. Also, former UFC champion and one of the stars of the A-Team movie, Rampage Jackson. Now, today, we're issuing wake-up calls to parents with teens involved in gangs because it is an adult issue. You know, something that was interesting to me that you said, because Isaac's mom here was saying that they blew all the windows out of your house, true, with a shotgun blast, and you spent $6,000 replacing the windows. You had a comment about that.
I would have used those $6,000 to get a new place to live. That's what I would have done.
Really? Get out of the neighborhood, right?
Yeah, get out of that neighborhood because a kid is like, you know, it's mostly about who he's hanging around with, to be honest. You know, I hung around like the worst choice of friends ever, you know what I'm saying? It's all about who you're hanging around with. I moved to a new neighborhood, and I started wrestling, and for some reason, I decided to become a new person. Like, these people didn't know. They didn't know me. They didn't know my fight record back in my old neighborhood. I didn't have to fight people here and stuff. No more. I didn't have to prove how tough I was, so I pretended like I wasn't tough. I quit smoking weed. I quit, like, doing all the stuff I was doing. I quit drinking. I wanted to become a professional wrestler, so I joined the wrestling team, and I just forgot about my old life, and before you know it, you know what I'm saying, I was like a new person, and I started doing good in school. I was 17 years old in the 9th grade. It was bad, you know, I was...
Yeah, but you made a change. Now, Lee Vester was involved in a gang until he was facing life in prison for attempted murder at the age of 15. Oh. Now he works with Father Greg at Homeboy Bakery. I'm so glad you're here. Father Greg says you got to want to make a change, and that's what Rampage is saying. He wanted to make a change. Did you want to make a change?
Yeah, eventually, the last few years I wanted to make a change, and Father Greg gave me that opportunity. So it just felt like once you seek help, you know, somebody's going to help you along the way, and if you don't want help, it's like nobody really cares if you don't care about yourself.
Yeah, and that's the whole, I mean, that's the whole point that you're making. You gotta want to do it. Now, April is desperate to get 14-year-old Isaac back on track. Now, a year ago, she signed up for Big Brother. She wanted to get a big brother for him with Big Brother and Big Sister of New Mexico. But there's like a huge waiting list, yes. I understand. We spoke with the folks at Big Brother, Big Sister, and they have moved Isaac to the top of the list. So when you go back home, when you go back home, he has a big brother waiting for him that can start talking to him and making, you know, some other noise in his head. And I think that's really, really important. And for everybody else out there, Big Brothers and Big Sisters of America, oh my gosh, what an amazing organization. Give of yourself, give your time, give your money, you know, take that role on. Now, I think that when boys get to a certain age, they want to belong to something. And I am a huge music fan, and I've always said I'd rather it be a band than a gang. But the problem is that with cutbacks in budget, they're stripping these music programs out of the schools. And so the options are getting narrower and narrower for these kids. So last year, the Dr. Phil Foundation launched Little Kids Rock Across America, which is a music program putting this back into the school. And my goal was to meet the need of kids vulnerable to gang recruitment. And with $1 million invested in the first year, this music program has served so far 26,399 kids in 10 cities. Now, for more information on this program, you can go to drphilfoundation.org and click on Little Kids Rock Across America, because we want your support in that. And understand, ask yourself as parents in your own community, if the options are narrowing, not every kid is an athlete. Not every kid has, you know, some way that they can pursue. And so I think they need to have different options. And because a lot of schools have cut the music program, and Isaac's school is no exception, we spoke with Dr. John Gratton, the Vice President of New Mexico Junior College, and he's agreed to enroll Isaac in free music classes at the college as well. So we're going to try to get some options for him to do some things along the way. Now, you guys are huge fans of this guy, right? Oh, you notice when he got here, all of a sudden, we just sort of disappeared. I mean, they're here saying, oh my gosh, you know, I can't believe you met him. So we're going to get Rampage here to hook you up with some tickets to a live UFC event so you can see what actually goes into this. And how much discipline and commitment it takes. This isn't just about being tough. This is about doing the work, right?
Yeah, it's a lot of discipline. You know what I'm saying? It's all about, you know, it's all the training and everything, going to diet, everything's been total discipline.
You guys will get to talk after the show. Homeboy Industries, write it down, mark it in your brain. More importantly, mark it in your checkbook. I'm going to talk more about that when we get back. We'll be right back. Well, we're going to continue our dialogue with these two young men and their parents after the show. You're an athlete, right?
Yes, sir.
Well, we've been talking to Rampage here, and he says that he can hook you up with a training camp right here in L.A. for the kind of work that he's done in his give you something to throw yourself into. Now, if you fear that your child is hanging out with the wrong crowd and headed for trouble, go to drphil.com. Tell us your story, and we're going to have a list of resources on our website. I just want to make a special thank you to Father Greg Boyle and his team at Homeboy Industries, not just for being here today, but for what they do every single day. It's about options, and boy, do you offer them to these kids at night. Everyone in the audience today is going home with a copy of his best-selling book, Tattoos on the Heart. So it is a powerful and inspirational read. It was given to me by a good friend of mine, and I read it in one sitting, and it is a moving story. It's funny, it's informative, but you did a great job on that, and I'm so glad you finally wrote it. According to the book, it took them forever to get you to do this, but he did it. And with the holidays right around the corner, you're all going home with some classic holiday cookies, fresh from the Homeboy Bakery. This is really great stuff, and it is delicious. Now, if you want to know more about Homeboy Industries, or you're interested in giving a donation, go to homeboy-industries.org. Let me say it again, homeboy-industries.org. Special thanks to Quentin Rampage Jackson. Thank you for being here and talking to these boys. Thanks for being here today. So long. Thanks so much.
Bounce, bounce, all the girlies bounce. Take 'em to my house, turn the party out. Bounce, 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 all the girlies bounce. Take 'em to my house, turn the party out.
You warned me 1,000 times, memories can kill ya, but I didn't hear ya. I thought that I could fly, but woke up on the asphalt. I swear there was the last time. I've always been naive, call it.
Ooh, you know we gon' get it. Ooh, you know we gon' get it. Ooh, you know we gon' get it. Every day and night, that's right. Ooh, you know we gon' get it. Ooh, you know we gon' get it. Ooh, you know we